Wolfgang stood up and looked around the audience, raising his arms like he thought he was Nero or some dead ruler. He was looking a bit frazzled. When people started screaming their objections, Renata ran off the stage and straight to the wings. Was ist denn los? She screamed at her manager as she looked over his shoulder at Jasmine as she stood soaking in the moment. Without saying a word, the manager pointed to the video screen. Renata slowly turned around to view a giant blown up version of Jasmine singing her lyrics to I Got the Lovin'. The curtains closed and the lights were turned on for the main floor where mayhem was starting to brew. The floor security had a difficult time calming the crowd and making them leave. After a good half hour, they succeeded, averting what could have been a serious mini riot. Learning from their earlier encounter, Renata avoided any physical encounter with Jasmine. Instead, she yelled out, Beach! In Jasmine's direction as she trotted past to her dressing room, arms folded over her breasts. The body paint job now looked like someone had puked instead of painted, and the designs on it, and it had faded further, exposing both of her breasts. Jasmine just laughed along with Sadim and Jericho, especially when Renata had a hard time opening the door of the dressing room. She rapped on it a few times before someone finally opened up, looking shocked to see her so soon. Wolfgang was next. The trio observed him approach his manager, who just shrugged his shoulders and accepted the verbal torrent. Wolfgang heaped on him as they quickly made their way to his dressing room. He gave Jasmine a hateful glance and mumbled, Who you think you are? When he neared the trio. I know I'm Jasmine Jackson, the vocalist and writer of I Got the Lovin'. Jasmine was getting louder as she was now speaking to Wolfgang's back. And I'm from Detroit, and we don't play that shit. The weeks that followed, the weeks that followed that epic evening went by in a blur. There were so many interviews given to the media, either by phone or in person, that eventually Jasmine and her new manager, Sardine, had to arrange for an international press conference, which was held 1 week later at one of Munich's largest hotels. Twyla had even called Jasmine from California to tell her that she'd heard about the slap heard around the world, as the press had dubbed the incident. Jasmine eagerly told her how the media had taken the videotape and ran with it. As a result of all the publicity, All Hail the Queen went into the charts at the number 8 slot and shot to number 1 for 3 weeks in Germany. It peaked at the number 4 position on MTV's European Top 20 countdown. One of the journalists asked her an interesting question early into the whole media blitz. What do you hope to accomplish? She inquired. At the time, all Jasmine could say was revenge, but that wasn't entirely true. She wanted to take it a step further and have the entertainment laws changed to protect the artists. A few more stories broke with news of other fraudulent artists after hers and the Milli Vanilli incident, but the real artists never received compensation for their talent. Usually, as in Jasmine's case, they had signed a well thought out legal document. The law Jasmine wanted on the books was that when filing for the GEMA rights of a tune, it must be stated if the visual artist and the studio artist were the same person. Of course, it wouldn't have the exact wording, but that would be the essence of the law. If current producers, managers, and record companies were approached with a demo package from Aretha Franklin and just say the world had never heard of Aretha Franklin before, What were the odds of Aretha sustaining a career in the music business, considering the MTV mentality of this generation? Nil to none, unless the undiscovered Aretha could come up with something entirely new, a frontier approach of getting into the record business that had yet to be invented, and the world would never experience the stirring of one spirit that only Aretha Franklin could make happen just singing the alphabet. Yes, Jasmine was truly counting her blessings and was pleased with the money generated by her number one German hit, All Hail the Queen. But still, the plight of a talented singer in the current music business was not an inevitable future at all, and not an enviable future at all. Twyla's call from California had gotten Jasmine thinking that maybe now was the time to not only change the law to protect the artist, but that also it wouldn't be such a bad idea to announce her own independent label. After all, she had access to one of the best studios in Deutschland through her manager, and after So Cool finished their project, there were countless other artists that she met along the way who had never been able to secure a record label or a record deal. Jasmine knew they were talented enough to garner a few Grammys, so why not? Jasmine took out her appointment book and made a little note with an asterisk beside it to contact Rick Washington, a male vocalist she had happened upon at a high class hotel lounge in Munich not too long ago. Rick's voice was a crossover between James Ingram and Jeffrey Osborne, and with the right lyrics, Jasmine knew he could generate some hits. She briefly noted the asterisk she had made last month next to Jim's name on January's page and wondered briefly whatever happened to the meeting he wanted then. She thought she'd get with him later or at least give him a call. Twyla's call came from California because that's where the colonel had been transferred to when the doctors in Frankfurt were unable to come up with a diagnosis for the mysterious illness that he was suffering from. After Verges's finally contacting Jasmine and gave her the shocking news that the colonel was ill, Jasmine really had reservations about whether they should know about Twyla being his daughter or not. But she had no time to waste when she spoke to Verges, because Verges had made arrangements for the colonel to be released from Frankfurt's hospital and admitted to Cedar Sinai Medical Center in California. Jasmine just took the plunge, and she and Sadim sat Twyla down one evening and broke the news of the discovery of Twyla's father. Twyla broke down and cried, not a pretty sight, at the thought of finally finding her father, and didn't care in the least that he was stricken with some unknown illness. And Verges seemed eternally grateful to Jasmine for the discovery of her daughter, as Verges called Twyla the first time they all met. It seemed to be just what Twyla needed in her life, meaning. Verges said Twyla was usually with her at the hospital or at the African American church that Verges found not too far from the hospital, which she attended with Twyla right there, clapping and singing. Verges told Twyla that there were hundreds and maybe thousands of soldiers who had pulled duty in the Gulf War and were coming down with the strange ailments upon their return from their tour. She said that at least 3 of the wives from Bakersfield who had conceived a child upon their husband's return from Persian Gulf had delivered deformed babies. All fingers were eager to point to Saddam and his unseen weapons of biological warfare. But after thinking it over, Jasmine's question was, how come Wolf Blitzer or Tom Brokaw or the countless cameramen and soundmen don't seem affected?